Pablo Escobar's final day on the run. Pablo Escobar Gaviria, a name admired by some and a term used by others, was a man whose presence stretched across the continent and even beyond Latin America. Recognized as the Patrón del Mal and the Cocaine King, today we will delve deeper into his final days to uncover what lies behind them. Was he murdered, or did he plan his own death? Stay tuned to find out. Where was he? An important aspect of Escobar's death was his whereabouts, as he had completely disappeared like a ghost. Several organizations were searching for him, and for the first time in history, several organizations came together to carry out and accomplish this search. Organizations such as Los Pepes, an organization that was born from the Cali cartel with the sole purpose of eliminating him, although it was a rumor. The military, the United States, and the Colombian government had begun the race to eliminate this man, but no one knew where he was. So several organizations joined forces to capture him, Delta Force, and Navy SEALs, who lent their strength to the investigation, which was very practical. But how do you catch someone with his presence? We're talking about a person who could be in the public eye and be untouchable with the enormous power he had. How did Pablo Escobar's vast empire fall? How did he dig his own grave? The fall of Pablo Escobar's empire. Well, even though he already existed, it was impossible to end him. He remained the highest there was. However, one of the steps that led to his assassination, or at least to finding one of the ways, was the assassination of Rodrigo Lara Vanilla in 1984. Since this man was fearless, the article also mentions him as someone who is not afraid of people who are outside the law. Of course, these could just be words. However, the problem with Rodrigo is that he didn't just say or do it for the sake of it. He was willing to put an end to it all. This led Escobar to order the assassination of Minister Rodrigo Lara Vanilla in 1984, which drew a strong response from the Colombian state. From then on, the pursuit of Escobar and his cartel intensified, as they were involved in a series of attacks and terrorist acts throughout the country. This was followed by another catastrophic event, the seizure of the Palace of Justice in 1985. One of Escobar's most cruel and ruthless acts. A battle that, as explained in the media, was between a group from the Medellin cartel and the guerrilla group M19, with the intention of ending President Betancourt, was a conflict that clearly involved the cartel boss of the time and openly opened the conflict between Escobar and the Colombian state. And we could go on, as happened in 1989, with an ugly, bloody, bloodthirsty, and disturbing wave of violence that included the assassination of several presidential candidates, including Luis Carlos Galán, who represented hope for the country. But it was not only his death, it was also the death of another great hope for the country. Antioquia policeman Valdemar Franklin Quintero, recognized for his commitment to fighting crime, was killed on the same day as political leader Luis Carlos Galán, in an attempt to create chaos in the country and destabilize the political and security situation. It was a very dark day in Colombian history, marking the beginning of a dark era. But even when it seemed that Escobar's presence was so great, there were still some traces of hope. President Cesar Gaviria implemented a policy of submission to justice between 1989 and 1991. This strategy aimed to dismantle the structure of the Medellin cartel, obtain the surrender of some of its most prominent members, such as the Ochoa V. Ziquez family, and prohibit the extradition of Colombians as part of an effort to de-escalate the level of violence. But here was a glimmer of hope: the arrest, the cathedral prison. Finally, we come to the time when they managed to imprison the most dangerous criminal in the world. Well, actually, he surrendered to the authorities after all the attacks. People were quite happy. The idea was to reach an agreement and negotiate with the government of President Cesar Gaviria, where Escobar agreed to surrender in exchange for the prohibition of the extradition of Colombians. But it was also done to prevent him from being sent to the United States if he was caught. In other words, it was easier to be in prison than to be free. The prison built on Escobar's orders in Envigado, Antioquia, was located on land that was later discovered to belong to him. This led to a controversial imprisonment, as it was found that the prison was full of luxury and comfort. Comfortable rooms, billiard rooms, a bar, a soccer field, and other extravagances were found. In addition, orgies and parties were held for the boss's friends and killers. The main prison guard was on his payroll, while the army provided security on the outskirts of the city. Ignoring many of Escobar's illegal actions, despite his supposed incarceration, Escobar continued to run his cartel from La Catedral, causing concern and criticism from the public and authorities. After almost a year in jail, Escobar became embroiled in a scandal when it was discovered that several celebrities had visited him, including soccer player Ren Higuita. But this wouldn't last for long. What led to Escobar's imprisonment? Although it's a subject to be explored later, it's really because he had the noose around his neck. He had a large number of potential traitors, and his constant murders caused him to lose some power in the underworld, which made the rest of the organizations move to kill him. He was safe in his prison, at least for a while, when he decided to escape. This was because he killed 2 of his men and some people who were government officials, which led to his rights to serve prison time in Colombia being revoked. Which led us, on July 22, 1992, the Kingpin and his men managed to escape by kicking down one of the prison's plaster walls, taking advantage of the fog that covered the area and a coordinated power outage. This escape was a devastating blow to the Colombian authorities and led to the dismissal of the officials responsible for prison security. From that moment on, the hunt for Pablo Escobar would begin, but it was the beginning of the end. The problem wasn't him, it was his family. A man's greatest weakness is his children, and obviously all the organized groups knew that and went after them. Not just Escobar, but if they caught his family, they would have the man on his knees. So he tried everything to get them to escape. The Colombian government simply refused to protect them unless he surrendered, which led to several attempts to protect them by trying to seek asylum in some parts of Europe, where they were denied. This led to this audio.
Sido paraíso y refugio de ciudadanos alemanes que huyeron después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial. Aquí se les trató con cariño y con respeto, y nunca a sus familiares inocentes se les tildó de criminales. Atentamente, Pablo Escobar Gaviria.
This threat was directed at Germany and Europe, as well as the head of the German embassy in Colombia. But there was no way to protect his family, both Los Pepes and the bloke de Bisqueda. It's time to look into them. Escobar's captors, El Bloke de Bisqueda and Hugo Martinez Polta. The legendary Bloke de Bisqueda is still an elite unit of the National Police of Colombia and the National Army of Colombia. It was created in response to the Medellin cartel's reign of terror, especially after the assassinations of presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán and brave police commander Valdemar Franklin Quintero in 1989. The mastermind behind this unstoppable force was Colonel Hugo Martinez, who truly was the man who hunted Escobar to the end of his days. Martinez led this elite force with determination, composed of the best and most incorruptible police officers, meticulously selected to ensure their integrity and absolute loyalty in the fight against drug trafficking. Under Martinez's command, the Bloke de Bisqueda dealt devastating blows to the cartel, eliminating key leaders such as Mario Henao Vallejo, Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, and other prominent members of the criminal organization. They also dismantled the feared Los Priscos gang, demonstrating their relentless determination in the fight against crime. The group began to back Escobar into a corner, and was clearly one of the reasons he eventually surrendered. Los Pepes. This is another element that speaks to how Escobar's empire was falling apart, and how he was really being self-centered by creating his own prison, but rather slowly starting to flee like a scared dog from his own comrades who were beginning to hunt him down. This was created by some of his former comrades: Fidel Castro, Carlos Castillo Gil, Diego Fernando Murillo, and Rafael Delano, who had joined forces with the head of the Cali cartel for financing. In fact, the cartel that was one of the tentacles of the Medellin cartel was the one that betrayed him to start his hunt. The last days after Escobar's escape in 1992, the bloke to be Squadra was re-established. Although Martinez was in Spain as a military attaché, he quickly returned to Colombia to once again direct the operations. He decided to assemble a select team of officers and agents, equipped with the best equipment available. Martinez led a series of operations that resulted in the elimination of key Escobar hitmen such as Gramses Muaz Mosquera, Johnny Rivera Acosta, John Jero Posada Valencia, and the notorious Mario Alberto Castamol, known as Choco. At the same time, the Pepes began their hunt in 1993, marking the true beginning of the end for Escobar, while the bloke to be Squadra, with Martinez at its head, became the country's hope for ending drug trafficking. Another group organized his capture and assassination. The worst part of the case is that the government decided to make a new move against him. They decided to protect his family. Although it should be said that they used them as bait to lure the Pepes and subsequently make Pablo surrender or accept his death. Things were falling into place. The drug lord, the Patrón del Mal, was cornered on all sides, losing his money, his properties, his family, his cartel, absolutely everything. He was nothing but a powerless fugitive, cornered more and more like a cockroach. The last day. This brings us to the last day of his life. We set the scene in 1993, on December 2 of that year, when one of the most dangerous men to ever set foot in Latin America, Pablo Escobar Gaviria, was finally recorded. A death that marked a before and after in the world of drug trafficking. The day after his last day, the family wasn't that sad, especially the mother who really felt it. But in a way, his children and his wife didn't resent his death that much. He brought it on himself, clearly. Still, he had his funeral, and it was a hard blow for a family that had been wealthy for years. With Pablo Escobar's death, Colombia closed this dark chapter of its history, but the drug trafficker's legacy remains a subject of debate and fascination worldwide, as he left behind a new era of traffickers vying to have the same impact. But with Escobar's death, it is clear that the laws and the military have become much tougher on these types of criminals, preventing them from getting close to power. El Patrón del Mal is one of the greatest drug lords in history, a man who shook a nation with the largest cartel in the world, had it all, and died with nothing. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on what you think.